This is Veteran State of Mind. I'm your host, Geraint Jones. Welcome. Thank you for joining us today. We have a returning guest on the podcast. So I'll tell you what, if you haven't listened to episode 83 and episode 89, Across the Fence, part 1 and 2, go back and have a listen to those. If you have, welcome back. Let's carry on. Today's guest is a Special Forces legend, served in Vietnam. And when I say served in Vietnam, I mean he was kind of based in Vietnam and involved in the war then, but he used to do sneaky beaky missions over the border, black ops, you might say. He's an absolute legend of the bloke. He is, of course, John Stryker Meyer, a.k.a. Tilt. And as a special treat, I thought, you know what would be fun? We should have the headman of the village, the Russian peasant, Joseph Stabin, join us, a.k.a. my friend Joe Lynn, the British rogue. We've got him on as well today. He's co-hosting with me. And before we get to the episode, guys, I want to say a big thank you to Zulu Alpha Straps, long-time sponsor of the podcast. We love them, long time too. They make bombers watch straps for alley blokes. What is a bomber's watch strap, I hear you ask? Well, guys, it is a fantastic piece of gourmet. Gourmet? Is that the right word for... I don't think that's the right word for stitching. Whatever the equivalent of gourmet is when it comes to seamsman strips. Right, I'm going to leave that word and move on. Basically, they make a fantastic watch strap, which, if you are in the military, is very important. You do not want your watch getting snapped off your wrist, as has happened to me many times. If you check out my photos on social media, you will see that I have literally black nasty tape holding my watch onto my body armour. Not ideal. Bombers watch straps, they've got the Blackbeard design, which is one of my favourites. They've got that out at the moment. You can check them out at Zulu Alpha Straps. Impress the opposite sex. Impress the same sex. Impress both sexes with the Zulu Alpha watch strap. Thanks also to Combat Fuel. Love them for my juicy gains. I've been using a lot of the vegan protein at the moment. The sun has come out in the UK after a long period of absence. It's been very nice to see, but of course that's put me into panic cutting mode after about a year of bulking. So I've been using a lot of the vegan protein so I can cut down on my calories but still get a high amount of protein every day. It's delicious. I like to mix it up in the blender with a bit of ice, some natural yogurt. See, I'm not a vegan, but I just use the Combat Fuel vegan protein because it is so darn delicious. Mix it up in there, put a bit of peanut butter in too, put a banana in there, you have yourselves a fantastic shake. I also use their pump up. I'm putting my false teeth in today. Pump up pre-workout and the regular pre-workout. I like to mix a bit of those together. I know Joe as well is a big fan of the pump up protein. As he said himself, he thinks it's witchcraft because it doesn't have all these ingredients in like caffeine, which is fantastic because it means that you get a buzz, you get a great pump, but then you don't have a crash, which you get like a lot of other pre-workouts out there. So check them out at Combat Fuel. Everything's linked up in the show notes. All right, guys, let's get into today's episode with the legend himself, Mr. John Stryker Meyer, a.k.a. Tilt. Also Joe the Peasant. Tilt, welcome back to the podcast, sir. How are you doing?
Good to be back. Absolutely. TGIF, brother.
It is indeed. We're recording this on Friday. For anyone who doesn't know what that one is. And as a special treat for the listeners today, I've invited my friend and co-host, head of the Russian village peasants back in, Joseph Stabin. How are you, mate?
How's it going, brother? I'm good, brother. Yourself?
I'm excellent, mate. I'm looking forward to today. I think you and me are going to have some jaws dropped by Tilt and his stories, but I wanted to get somebody else on who had, like you've been the same places as me, and even though we've both been on deployments and things, there's so much difference in what we did to what Tilt did, and I think we both have a lot of questions for him.
Yeah, but the good news is you guys did it.
I would like to have been with you. You had some good music in that era.
Oh, that's true. Yeah. Definitely had a higher quality of music.
So what we're going to do today, Till, is we're going to go through one of your missions from, beginning to end. We're going to get granular. We're going to get into it because we have a lot of kit monsters that listen to the podcast. They want to know the kind of equipment that you were using. And then we have like serving military. I think there's going to be some good lessons in them about techniques that you were using on the ground. And then there's, just people like me and Joe who are just perverts and just like to hear a good war story. So I think there's going to be something for everyone in this. So just to recap a little bit, I've told people in the introduction to go back and listen to the previous podcasts, but I know some of them won't listen because they're naughty boys. So just give people what were you doing in Vietnam? What was your role there? And just to set up what we're going to talk about in this mission.
Sure. During the Vietnam War, the Green Berets were involved very early. And this was a traditional Green Beret role in Vietnam where a 12-man Green Beret team would go to Vietnam, work in a certain village, work with the indigenous people, training them, everything from like their local water supply, how important it was to have the shitter downstream, not upstream from the water you drank and bathed in. So from something as fundamental as that to village self-defense, then ultimately recon, and then defending themselves against the communist forces that wanted to take over at that time. So you had the traditional Green Berets that were in country. In 1962, the U.S. government entered into an accord with Laos, Cambodia, and North Vietnam, communist scumbags. And the agreement was there would be no combat troops stationed by either country in Laos or Cambodia. The U.S. removed all troops that were traditional. Like in the early 60s, we had operations in Laos with SF and Cambodia. They were all shut down and they came back. And the communists publicly said, yes, we'll do the same thing. But even by 1962, the communists had been infiltrating into South Vietnam through the Ho Chi Minh Trail. And the Ho Chi Minh Trail came from North Vietnam, came south, then it went west at the DMZ. And then they had lines, supply lines, that would come into Vietnam where they could bring in troops, attack, and then go back across the border into a sanctuary. And those were the stupid rules of engagement we had at that time. So in 64, because this was shaping up and our government knew that the communists were there, for some reason they didn't expose it enough. And then they said, well, we need people to find out what's going on. That's where MACV-SOG was formed in 1964. And the missions were to go across the fence into Laos, Cambodia, North Vietnam to pick up, try to get POWs, to pick up rescue our American pilots. And ultimately, we were doing wiretaps, bomb damage assessments, point recon, area recon, and some of the point missions, like the one that the Frenchman was on, was to go in to blow up enemy fuel dumps. And so those are some of the range of missions. And by the time I arrived there in 1968, the communists had 25 to 30,000 NVA in Laos alone, 25 to 100,000 in Cambodia. And our job was to infiltrate, often by helicopter at that point, go into a target, run a mission to find out what was going on. What we didn't realize was by the end of the war, SOG had the highest casualty rate of the war, with the casualty rate exceeding 100%. So your blokes there would go, wait, how do you exceed 100% casualties? Well, Bob Howard, for example, had 8 Purple Hearts. So between the killed in action, wounded in action, and missing in action, to give you, your viewers, a sense of the deadliness of that mission, today, as we speak, there are 50 Green Berets in Laos alone who are listed as missing in action in Laos from the secret war. And there are still 80 plus aviators who died, helicopter pilots, fast movers, A-1 Sky Raiders, who died supporting SOG missions in Laos and Cambodia. And that gives you a sense of the scope of what we're up against.
And this is a very high number, because there's over 50,000 American troops died in the Vietnam War, right?
Yeah, and could I give you a personal note
yeah,
right here?
Yeah.
53 years ago, I landed at FOB-1 Fubai. I got off the helicopter, Spike Team Idaho got on the helicopter and disappeared. The 1-0, the team leader was Glenn Lane. The 1-1 was Robert Owen. They're amongst the 50 that are still missing in action today in Laos. And that's how I got my job. An entire recon team was wiped out. And there was an opening in recon at FOB-1 Fubai. And that's how I got my start with Idaho.
So, Joe, I want to break down some of those, you listed some of the types of mission that you'd be doing, like wiretaps and that kind of thing. Can you break those down a bit more and get to let us know what those kind of missions were? So what was a wiretap mission, for instance, and what was a wiretap?
Yeah, sure. The North Vietnamese telephone, as the longer the war went on, they had more phone lines that came south. And of course, they were in Laos. Some were right on the border. And a couple of our target areas, they had photographs of the wires. So as on this one target that we're going to talk about a little bit later, one of our secondary missions was a wiretap. And so in that case, we got in, we put up a wiretap, and we had trained our team, particularly the South Vietnamese, because they could climb telephone poles and trees faster than any gringo could. And they would go up, climb the pole, tap into it. And the reason why we would tap into it is that the North Vietnamese telephone lines, when you put the phone in the cradle, it was still active. It was still alive. Like our phones in America, you put it in the cradle, the line goes dead. But there it was open. It was still, so the CIA said, go wiretap, even if you don't hear anything, wiretap it, give us the tapes, we'll amplify it 100 times. And they said they gained valuable intel off of those taps. Now, of course, the CIA never came back and said, thank you. They never came back and said, hey, we learned that Ho Chi Minh was jerking off with sandpaper yesterday and he hurt himself. We never got anything good like that. But that would be it. And then Sal, at that point, was our Vietnamese counterpart. He was our Vietnamese team leader. He had been fighting in the secret war for 2.5 years by the time I joined the team in 1968. Amazing man, fearless. He was a farmer. All he wanted to do was go back to his farm, but he hated the communists. And he was willing to put his life on the line every day to fight it. So he would climb up the telephone pole, tap, and then when he came down, he would cover the wire with mud. So if anybody went by on the trail, they would not be able to see the wire on the telephone pole. And then we had it plugged into, at the time, state-of-the-art cassette player. Plugged it in, taped it, and then when the tape ran out, you flip it, get the other side. When it would run out, we put another tape in, and we would tape as long as we could. Then when we got back, we turn it over to CIA. And that would be a wiretap mission.
Any questions, Joe?
Yeah, I mean, it's incredible, really, when you think about it, because, I mean, that sort of stuff what goes on now with, you know what I mean, government nerds in a room, sitting in the mum's basement somewhere. Obviously, back in the day, you had to have a group of guys go out on the ground to get that into learn. And it's funny how it comes full circle, because now, whether it's military or criminal enterprise, one of the most effective ways is to take technology right the way back and communicate in them ways now, because you can't tap in the ways what they're doing now.
Yeah, it's a crazy one to me, that just this idea that someone's out there laying telephone lines through these jungles and over these mountains and everything, and and they're building roads through there and stuff. And because I think people have this idea about the Vietnamese enemy as being really kind of primitive, living in a tunnel or whatever. But the fact is they were in the jungle having to build infrastructure all the way down. And it reminds me a lot of the situation with the Taliban in Pakistan, where you had an enemy where it's like they don't recognize a border. They go back and forth over it as much as they want. They use it for moving logistics. They move it for using men. They use it for using money. They use it for the casualty evacuations. But then we look at this line on a map and go, oh no, we can't go over there. But they're just back and forth. So like you're saying, nothing in that sense, like nothing changes in a lot of these kind of things. Can you tell us a bit more? I just mentioned the terrain there, Till. Can you tell us a bit more about the kind of, terrain that you were operating in? Because we all know, anyone that's seen a Vietnam movie will think jungle, but I think the mountains is one of the things that really takes people aback when they learn a bit more about it.
Laos, particularly in our areas of operation, was extremely mountainous, and from the air was beautiful. You had waterfalls, and of course you had primitive farming. The farmers there would do a slash and burn. They would slash an area, then they would grow crops until the soil lost its enriched contents, and then they would just burn it off and let it be. And so when you flew over, try to get an LZ that would be near the top of a mountain or some kind of an area where we wouldn't be in a valley. And the mountains were, I forget what the actual range, but it was like, it wasn't the Rocky Mountains, but it was between the Rocky Mountains and the White Mountains of New Hampshire. I mean, it's very mountainous. And then unlike New Hampshire, we had triple canopy jungle. So there was 3 layers of jungle vegetation, one at 50 feet, another one above that, and a third level of vegetation. So that would be anywhere from 100 to 150 feet of vegetation. So you had to find an LZ to get a helicopter in, or high enough that you could hover and rappel into the target. Then once on the ground, then you move out. And the NVA had they had LZ watchers. They had some people on the border that would look for a helicopter to see what the azimuth was. When in our case, we crossed the Ashall Valley, which was the western edge of Vietnam, and mixed into Laos. That was our worst target area for FOB-1. So the mountains were formidable. And, we would move up and down those all day long, never on a trail. And when we moved 10 minutes and then wait 10 minutes just to hear the jungle. Because during that period of time, when you listen to the jungle, that was when, if the jungle came back to routine jungle sounds, birds chirping, insects, and all the other stuff, then we would move on. If the jungle stayed quiet, we knew that there was danger near. And then the question would be to try to find out how close they were to us.
So you mentioned some the NVA spotters and some of the kind of roles. Can you tell us a bit more about the enemy you were facing in terms of, their capabilities, your opinion of them, and, their, were they professional? Were they amateur? How was the enemy that you were facing?
Well, you had everything from the Pathet Lao, which were the Laotian communists who were piss poor troops. They had no discipline. In fact, on one of our missions, we had a practice mission where we were all east of the Ashall Valley. Another recon team went in, and the Pathet Lao was so bad, our recon team ambushed their ambush. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah, it does.
And then what we began in the summer of '68, during our briefings, we learned about NVA sappers. And those were highly trained North Vietnamese soldiers that were the creme de la creme of the North Vietnamese army. And they were trained for one purpose: to hunt, SOG, recon, and to kill the Americans. And they even had a Kill an American award that they handed out. So we had intel reports about this. And of course, August 23rd, '68, sappers hit our base at Da Nang, and they killed 16 Green Berets in that sneak attack at night. And that remains the highest casualty loss in Green Beret history. So those were the first time we saw them in action. And they came in wearing bandanas that said, "We came to die." And they did. So on New Year's Day, 1969, we had a recon team in Laos, and they were hit at first light by the NVA, who killed all the Americans and let the indigenous troops live so the indigenous could come back and tell the story. Then the same thing happened on November the 13th, '69, when we had RT ASP was wiped out, and the indigenous troops were wiped out with them. But on November the 3rd, RT Maryland was wiped out. All the Americans were killed, but the indig lived to come back and talk about the sappers that hit the team. And so when they hit us, they would come in, they would be wearing only a loincloth, an AK-47, and that would be it, maybe a bandana like they wore at CCN. And they would travel very light, and they hit with sudden vengeance, and they were well trained. So that was what we were aware of, and we trained against it. So at first light, we always be awake before first light, and then even at last light, you would be on hyper alert because that was when they were most inclined to hit you. By the end of the war, the NVA had an entire battalion that they were training up for Laos and Cambodia, strictly hunt and kill SOG teams.
So you mentioned the "we came to die" attitude of those sappers. What was the attitude like of the American team members and also of your like local troops? Because you guys volunteered for some very dangerous missions, but I've never really come across Westerners who have the same kind of mentality of, I'm coming on deployment to get killed. I mean, the ones I've met, we all want to go home. But how was that with your indigenous troops? Did they have that same kind of level of zeal, or what was that like?
I was very fortunate. The Vietnamese on my team were fearless, never once flinched. And they didn't like their regular army. They preferred fighting in the secret war with us. Of course, they got paid better, but I'm alive today thanks to our little people. I mean, they were just absolutely fearless. The bottom line was they knew their government in Vietnam, South Vietnam, was corrupt, but they preferred living in a corrupt government they knew as opposed to being under the thumb of the communists. And when it came to combat one-on-one, Sal and Hep, Fook, those guys were on top of their game, and we had to earn their respect. When I was first introduced to the team by Spider Parks, Sal turned to the interpreter, Hep, and said, of me, he's too tall, his feet are too big, and he looks stupid. So I had to earn their respect.
I mean, to be fair, we know we have a corrupt government, and I'd still rather have that than communism, so I can see where they're coming from. Joe, you got anything?
Again, with us, I mean, not quite on the same levels as what John's got, but we can draw a lot of parallels when it comes to sort of the Taliban fighters, the different tiers. Some of them are like in this sort of more rural areas were absolute dog shit, but like, as you know, in 2009 on Panther's Claw, where all the tier 1 fighters were down Nadi Ali, Babijay, they came for a fight. And it was similar to that, weren't it? Because you had these different quality fighters, like the foreign fighters that come down from Pakistan and further afield from that. I mean, they really meant the business, and they were doing the organised attacks and the much more sophisticated IEDs with the IEDs that came over the technology from Iran. So I imagine, like with Johnson, it was quite similar what that was. One question I've got for John, and I've been wondering it since listening to his other two podcasts, is, and it goes off on a tangent a little bit, but how do you feel about the whole Vietnam War in general? Because, like, for us, especially with Afghan, it was never really clear the reason we were there. A lot of good guys died, and looking back at it now, I wonder. Part of me resents not being allowed to go in there and plough the place and win it, and part of me thinks the whole thing was a waste of time. But how do you feel about Vietnam?
You and I have some similar thoughts, different wars, parallel thoughts. Because look at World War II. We went in to win. There's no rules of engagement that were stupid. Your rules of engagement were ridiculous. We had rules of engagement, but once we went across the fence, we fairly much ignored them, particularly anything stupid. And we were there. Once we were compromised, then it was strictly a survival mode. And in terms of Afghanistan, while you guys were there, by the time you get there, that war was started because that was where the whole terrorist attack generated and trained prior to coming to America, getting into the jets and then crashing into the towers. And that was why we were there with the early A teams, the Green Beret A teams that went in, had initial success. And then, of course, politicians get involved and things turn to shit. They had to go back and retake mountains again. Same thing happened in Vietnam. Look at Hamburger Hill. They take the Hamburger Hill. 2 days later, after a great loss of life and wounded in action, they walk away from it. It's like, I don't understand this. Whereas in World War II, had we fought your war and our war like World War II, you go in and take every inch and you keep it. Absolutely, I think the results in both wars would have been dramatically different.
I was saying that was one of the main frustrating points for me. In Afghanistan, we literally spent the whole tour chasing our tail because we go and take one village and take it, and then we'd move on to the next. And it was like a triangle. As we go to the next, the Taliban would filter back round, and I always end up back at the first one. He's like, "What the fuck are we doing this for? Why don't we just put enough troops on the ground to hold the ground we've taken?"
Yeah, I agree. We used to do stuff like you go into an area, hold it, clear all the IEDs, leave. All the IEDs just come back the next day. It's just like so let's go. Let's go into. I think things changed for you when you were talking about, because you got the book Across the Fence, and you were talking in there about how you used to do like a full orders process and stuff at first, but then that was less and less possible, wasn't it? As your kind of time was going on there.
Yeah, particularly in November of '68, we had lost a few teams. Some teams had wounded in action, and so we had people that were recuperating. Some people were rotating out. And at one point, our recon team was the only operational team in camp. Now, granted, it was a very short period of time, but during that time, in the morning, we'd get 3 targets. A target go out with the helicopters, and we got shot out of the primary, the secondary, and the alternate LZ. So we're low on fuel, fly back, eat lunch. They say, here's a new target. The Covey, which was our fact, will find an LZ for you. Okay. And that's the briefing. And we got shot out. Primary, secondary, alternate again. Even that alone just wears on. It's like flying for an hour or so, and then all of a sudden you're under enemy fire.
So can you explain a couple of things in there, John? You said shot out and FAC. Can you explain to the listeners what you mean by those?
Oh, sure. As the helicopter would be spiraling in, we in '68, our sole transport was the South Vietnamese Air Force, the 219 Special Operations Squadron. And the Vietnamese pilots were just remarkable. They were fearless. And they flew the old Sikorsky H-34, which had a B-17 engine, the 9-cylinder engine in it. That was the same one they used in the B-17s. And they would spiral in. As we spiraled in, sometimes we would see the enemy and we'd open fires. Most often, the enemy would fire at us. On one occasion, as we were going into the LZ, Sal, or fuck, I forget who it was, they saw a wire across the LZ. So they yelled to the door gunner. We pulled out and avoided hitting the wire. Had we hit the wire, people would have seen a 500-pound bomb detonate. It would have just obliterated the helicopter and everybody in it. So they knew we were coming.
What was their anti-aircraft capability like outside of the booby-trapping LZs?
Oh, well, as time went on, there was the bombing halt in '68. And in the early days, they still had Russian and Chinese anti-aircraft weapons. And they had the usual, the 12.7, which was like their equivalent of our 50 caliber. And then they later had 37 Mike. There were some odd, like 27 Mike, I think, and others. By the end of '68, they were coming down the Ho Chi Minh Trail with far more heavy weaponry, which would include weapons that could fire ack-ack, like World War II. You see the scenes in London where the Germans would fly over and we have the ack-ack, and then when we fly over Germany, the Germans would put up anti-aircraft ack-ack. So when those things would explode next to an airplane, the shrapnel would blow out an airplane. And the same thing was true here. If that ack-ack hit a helicopter, it would just destroy it. And so a lot of times the pilots would fly along, and as soon as they saw one burst, they would drop, and then they would jute and go up and down so that it would take away the consistent altitude where they were flying, which would make life more difficult. But so when we were near the ground, you had enemy troops firing at everything from AK, RPDs to the 12.7, and then a higher caliber. And then when you're up 3,000 or 4,000 feet, ack-ack. And so, and as the longer the war went on, the more sophisticated it became.
And your insertions, were they always in daylight, given the jungle, or was it, or did you go in under cover of darkness?
No, always daylight. We didn't, in 1968, there was no night, no NOGs, no night vision capabilities. At that point, some of the earlier helicopters were beginning to have, I think they had some infrared capabilities, so they could go through clouds. But that was new technology. And so with the Vietnamese Air Force, they had the old H-34, codenamed King Bees. And they would be, once the Marine Corps and the Navy were done, they transitioned to HH-3s or to Hueys. All those old helicopters came over to the South Vietnamese Air Force.
Just so people get an idea of that helicopter in their head, is that the one that they use in the movie Full Metal Jacket? When they got the door gunner shooting the... Is that the one that they use there? It's quite the pilots like sitted quite high up at the front.
I forget, to be honest with you. It could be because the pilots were higher up, and then in the passenger compartment, if you look forward, you can see the pilot's feet on the pedals. So that was an H-34.
Yeah, for the British listeners, I think we referred to our version of that was the Wessex.
Yes.
I think is what it was when you've got the pilots and that high up at the front. So let's talk about this mission then, Till. What was this mission with the one we're going to talk about today? What was the kind of? Can you talk us through from being told about the mission and then your mission prep? And actually, maybe before we go into that, I should kind of, because I'm sure you were someone, you probably always had your kit ready to go and everything because you never knew when you were going to have to go out to whatever. So. Can you talk the listeners through what kit you used on your person, what weapons you used, and what you had on your back?
In my case, I always carried 600 plus rounds for the CAR-15. That was our primary weapon, which the CAR-15 was the AR-15 modified. It had a shorter barrel, had a collapsible stock, and it was made by Colt. And I'm alive today because it was a great weapon. We carried 20-round magazines for it, and the SOP was you only put 18 rounds in it because of the spring, because you want to make sure the spring didn't get too condensed, too squashed. So we carried 600 plus rounds for that. We had a sawed-off M79, which was a 40 millimeter round, and we carried mostly high explosive rounds we used with it, and then 10 to 12 hand grenades. And then in my case, I carried the PRC-25, which was the FM radio, and one extra battery for it. And then a little bit of food, some water, depending on the area. Maybe just take one canteen of water, 2 at the most. And then, because in Laos, we'd often come across a small stream. So we could refill our canteens, put the purification pills in it, and then drink it after the pills had done their duty, And so that was my personal kit. I just wore a head bandana. We had no vests. It's just too much weight already. And then, of course, we always had a compass, morphine, syrettes, a flash mirror, signal mirror. Then we always carried smoke grenades, too. The large smoke grenades, which would have different colors from violet, yellow, green, which I never used green because it's just hard to see that from the air, and then white. And then we had smaller smoke canisters. But those would be the main things we carried. And usually the weight would add up to be about 85, 90 pounds of weight.
And I'm guessing paper maps.
Yes. And the way they did our maps was we'd have a target box, a 6x6, 6 by 6 kilometers. And then the center would be the target. And they would cut the map out of an ordinary map so that we carried that. There'd be no other target information, nothing else. So that if we went down, the enemy came up, they would just see the map for that specific area, for that target. And then, sometimes we got off the map. Well, then you just by that time, you're familiar with the terrain. Covey knew where you are, generally speaking. Covey was our forward air controllers. And we'd be able to locate and be able to, once they got radio contact, we would then be able to make commo, and then if we needed air assets, to bring in the air.
Joe, you got any questions on the gear?
No, I mean, it's, we didn't carry as many, we did in our vehicles, but obviously there's guys on the ground didn't carry as many grenades and stuff, but it's surprising really how the loadouts are quite similar, even down to, the 40 millimeter UGLs. Obviously we didn't have the thumpers, ours were attached onto the rifles themselves, but during the kit was pretty similar. I mean, we were lucky in the Vikings, the vehicles what we were in, the recce vehicles, because it was like the Rolling Thunder. We took all the seats out in the front, so we just had the commander and driver, and everything else was stacked up with ammunition. And we'd replan guys on the ground who were running out. But apart from that, pretty similar, 12 magazines, the bandoliers. Because we were vehicle-mounted troops, we had the carbine version of the rifles as well.
What was your weapon in the vehicle, Joe?
It was an SA-80 rifle, but we had the carbine version, which was, the stock was the same, but the barrel was a shorter barrel.
And then you had the machine gun upon a pencil mount, the 7.62.
Yeah, that was. I had the Browning high power 9mm. I had the SA-80 carbine, but then obviously in my turret mount, I had the GPMG.
Yeah, some of us carried them with a vehicle.
Yeah, we had Browning high power also. We loved them. In fact, at one point, Lynn Black and I talked about just carrying the Browning, because you could carry 16 rounds in it, carry 2 Brownings with a lot of ammo. The load would have been a lot lighter. But we just couldn't get past that first moment of a firefight. You need that Car 15 putting out 18 rounds in a second and a half. But that's funny. You had the same pistols that we had.
Yeah,
some of our guys carried the Browning.
Yeah, I love the Browning. We had the option because the SIG 226 had just come into service around that time, but I didn't like the SIG. I thought it was a pile of shit. The top slide of the magazine expanded at a different rate to the magazine in the heat over there, and you get one round off and then it'd seize up. I thought it was a pile of shit, so I stuck with the Browning. In fact, that's what I've even got tattooed on my chest. I've got 2 Browning high powers tattooed across my chest.
You really liked it.
Yeah, I loved it.
I'm impressed.
I think the biggest difference in the kit is the body armor and helmet.
Yeah,
that's probably the biggest difference. I mean, I wouldn't want to wear a full set of body armor and helmet in the jungle, but the regular forces, the American regular forces, they did have to wear helmets and stuff, right?
Yes, they did. And the body armor in our day was ridiculous. It was really heavy. I really don't know how effective it was. In the early days, particularly during Tet offensive, there's a lot of pictures of traditional troops and Marines that wore the vest. But I can't attest to, we had them, but we only put them on if we were in base, if we were going to get a possible attack on the base. But we never had any helmets at all. And our protective vest, I don't know what the capabilities were. It was just irrelevant to us, because on the missions, they all stayed back.
You were talking about getting shot out of LZ, so you've been trying to get out on a mission, keep getting shot out. This went on for a couple of days, right? How was it that you eventually got out onto the ground for this mission?
Well, on this day, in the morning, there had been at least 2 days where we had gone through this routine, and our guys were worn out. So I swapped out some of the Vietnamese team members, and then Henry King came on our team as a strap hanger, just somebody to join the team for that mission. We knew Henry, he's a good guy, and he carried the experimental pump M79 that could fire 5 rounds of 40 millimeter round, like a shotgun. You fire a round, pump another round. When it worked, it was phenomenal. It gave us a lot of firepower. But But the trouble was it was heavy, and then he carried a lot of rounds for it. So on this mission in the morning, we got shot out of 03, 3 targets. Henry King came on the team, and then I switched some of our Vietnamese. So myself, Bubba, Shore, and King. And we went out after lunch, and there was some clouds, and they found a hole, inserted us into the target. Well, we were just glad to get on the ground. And so on this target, we got online. There was one of those slash and burn areas, and I abandoned all of our SOPs. I just got the team, and we moved up that mountain for, I say now, 50 years later, maybe an hour, a little over an hour. And everybody was spread out to minimize our footprints. And it was jungle. We went up, we came to the trail. It was a huge trail. Now, you couldn't see the trail from the air because they would grow it over, pull the branches in. They were excellent at concealing their trails. It was big enough that you could drive a tank and a truck down it side by side. So we crossed the trail, set up the ambush, and we had developed an ambush where you had 2 Claymore mines facing out. And then in the center, we had a block of C4 where Lynn Black had refined the technique where at 6 feet, there was enough C4 when it was detonated, it would knock out a person within 6 feet. And then the Claymores would kill everybody else. And then we had security Claymores on each flank. And then in the back, 1 Claymore. And then we had this beautiful wire. And Sal climbed up the telephone pole, tapped into the wires, came back down, covered it up. We're sitting there, and they're going up and down the trail. They didn't know we were there. It was a perfect insert. So we're happy. And the good news is it was a perfect insert. The bad news was the weather closed in. And so Covey came back a few hours later. I gave him the code that we would get a POW. And he said, don't move. You know, I'm at 10,000 feet. I can't see the mountain you're on. So a few minutes after that, sure enough, we hear tanks start up above us. The enemy activity on the trail picks up. Now we can hear dogs coming from the area of our LZ. And so they're tracking us. So we pulled down the ambush. Sal pulled down the wiretap. We moved to the left, crossed back across the trail in between enemy activity, and then continued to the left. I forget what direction it was. And we continued into the night. We came to a stream bed, and not too big, but just big enough the water was running. So we got in the stream bed, and I headed up the stream bed for at least another hour into the dark. And as we went along, we could hear the dogs. And Sal had climbed a tree, and he could tell that there were hundreds of people coming for us with lanterns and dogs. And we could hear the dogs coming up the mountain. So we went into the stream, and I had the guys go out. They give false trails. And then eventually we put down black pepper and powdered mace so that when the dogs hit it, it would foul their noses. And later we heard a couple of the dogs howling because they hit that stuff. But we were far enough up. At some point, we climbed a bank, put together our defensive circle for the night, and I was facing the riverbank. And around 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, a couple of guys walked past us in the stream. One guy had his lantern. The other guy they walked right past us. The lantern ran out of fuel. They turned around and came back, and they were walking back. Hep, my interpreter, coughed. And so the NVA climbed up that stream bed, but he only moved when the wind blew. So eventually he got up. He touched my boot. I heard him go, he caught his breath, and I had my feet spread, and my Car 15 pointed at him. So that's one of those moments in time, you know. He backed down, and he only moved again when the wind blew. I could hear him move, but he didn't take any aggressive action. And I didn't want to fire around. I could see Joe going, how come you didn't blow that sucker away? The reason why we didn't, Joe, we didn't want them to know where we were. So they left. First light, we left, and then we moved up the mountain for the whole day. And that was the start to that mission.
So I want to know a bit more about what was going on in your head in the moment, because there's a few kind of key moments there. Like finding the trail is a key moment, and then setting the ambush. Like you're going to probably be feeling a certain kind of way when you're in an ambush, as we all know about. That's that's a warm little fuzzy feeling in itself. But then, to hear dogs. And then to have a guy come up and crawl your boots. So can you take us through those different stages and what's going on in your head? And is there excitement? Is there fear? What's going on through Tilt's head?
Well, in the very beginning, I was really happy because our unorthodox beginning to that mission, by going up the mountain and pushing really hard, it saved us. Because in the end, they were tracking us with dogs, and they weren't used to us going that fast. And by that, we got to the trail. And so it's like, okay, we're across the trail. We got a wiretap run. This is the perfect mission. And we're like you said, the adrenaline's really pumping. You're going, hey, we're there. This is it. We're the top unit in the world. We're on a top secret mission, and we're going to get us a POW. Then we're going to go on R&R. And then it turned to shit. Mother Nature closed in on us, and we were socked in for 5 days. And so it went from that to like, oh shit factor, the pucker factor is -0. And then we moved, and Sal told us, he knew how many were coming at us. And that's why normally we wouldn't move at night, but we were in that stream bed. So the noise of the water and us moving, nobody could hear it. There was enough water and things and our guys moving up it that we were able to get a far enough distance between us and the full body of NVA that were hunting for us.
Were they waiting, do you think, for that? Because obviously, there was that air campaign going on. So do you think they were waiting for the weather to close in, and that's why you heard the tanks starting up and stuff then? Because once it had closed in, then they'd start using the trails?
I think they knew that we were there. They just didn't know where we were. And their SOP was, whenever there's a team on the ground, we're going to go get it and kill it. They would notify the sapper teams. The sapper teams would come out, and it would just be them getting their logistics together and getting the right people in the right place. And meantime, they came for us. Like I said, there was over 100 people with dogs and lanterns that were coming up the mountain.
What's it like to hear a tank start up and know that it's not your tank?
I'm assuming you're asking this question from your experience too, or you or Joe.
We've
hearing enemy tank.
Well, we've never had enemy tanks. That's the thing. Whenever we've heard aircraft or whenever we heard tanks, we knew they were ours.
No, in our case, the pucker factor just went to -0. It was like, oh shit. And we had no laws. We had no anti-tank weaponry with us. But it was far enough above us that they weren't able to get down to have an impact on us, because we were on the move at that point.
Fucking scary. Joe?
Yeah, like I say, I've listened to a couple of John's podcasts, and like I was saying to you before, some of the missions and stuff, I can draw parallels with stuff I've done, but then stories like this. I've been stranded for 5 days before we know comms, but I've never had a fucking Taliban come and grab my fucking boot.
It's because they didn't want to go near your stinking feet, mate. That's why.
Crazy shit.
And mine were actually clean because I've been in the stream,
Well, at that moment then, because like in the movies they talk about that, because this was a long time that this guy's crawling up, and he's crawling up as the wind's moving. So you probably did have a lot of time to think. So did you have those moments of like, oh my God, is this going to be it? Am I going to have to kill him with my knife? Or like, did you have flashbacks to being a kid? Like, how did that go?
Well, yeah, you know what? That's funny you say that. So no knife. I have my car 15. I don't want to get my hands dirty when I got my trusty car, because me and my car 15 will take on any NVA any day. And it's funny because as this clown's coming up the hill, I'm thinking he can hear my heart. I'm worried he's going to hear my heart beating. He's going to come towards the noise of my heart. and I wasn't sure what he was going to do. Because if I had heard any sudden noise, I would have pulled the trigger, but I didn't. And I thought about playing hide and go seek when we were kids. And I grew up in Trenton, New Jersey, and a couple of our neighbors had hedges. And I can remember hiding behind the hedges, and Barbara Poynton, my neighbor, and Teddy would walk past, and I'd be in behind the hedges, playing hide and go seek. And I thought about that in Laos, where this clown's climbing up the mountain to come get my ass, And so those are the mental things back and forth, like remembering playing hide and go seek. But this game had a little bit of a higher stake and the hide and seek and trend.
Do you ever wonder what happened to that guy in the water? Do you ever wonder about him?
I always wonder, yeah. And it's one of those deals I feel like if we could put it on social media, yo, Uncle Ho, send me, did you get a hold of Joe Bibb? Nugent confusion here. Anybody touch my boot, I like to talk to him, say thanks for not shooting me,
It's just crazy. I just saying but you've got to respect the guy, one, for like you said, he was moving like a pro.
Oh yeah.
But then he was like, touched the boot and he was like, you know what? I don't want to die today. I'm going. Just like kind of.
Yeah, he moved back and he moved out. And then in the morning at first light, we were out of there. And that led to one of the most arduous days we ever had on the ground, because we moved up that mountain. We didn't go straight up. You go like a diagonal climb, but we were climbing all day. And there we did more of the traditional 10 and 10 and had a break for lunch. And then we moved all the way up to noon because we had to get to the top of the mountain. We had commo. Covey came by and said, hey, the weather's still bad. You're still socked in. Don't make enemy contact, because if you do, you're on your own. And we knew they had thousands of people there from the earlier briefing, and plus the tank and all the people that we saw on the trail. So we wanted to get to the top of the mountain. And at one point, after a break, I stood up and I fell down. And I literally landed on my face in that Laotian soil. I'm lying there. And I got back up again and tried to get up, and I fell again, and I landed right on my face, hurt my bad knee. I'm lying there going, oh, shit. But I knew the whole team was looking at me because I was the 1-0. And so I put aside the self-pity thing and got up. But that was one of those critical moments I'll never forget, was that eating that damn Laotian soil in the jungle, knowing my guys were watching me. And then Henry King came up to me and said, hey, I'm carrying too much ammo for the M79. Can I bury some? I said, bury it. Because you saw me just fall down here. And it was partly fatigue because we've been all moving all day. And Sal pushed us. And Sal said, if we don't get to the top of the hill, we'll be in big trouble, because we're worried that the NVA would get up there and then come down. And so during us going up, Sal was running point, and then Sohn was running point. Twice, they had visual contact with woodcutters, Laotian woodcutters. And they saw us, we saw them, but all they had was saws. So we did nothing. But that emphasized the fact that we got to get up to the top. So we got up there about last light, set up the perimeter. And then that night, that's another one of those bizarre scenarios. When we would, like you guys, you would rotate who sleeps, who's awake at night, right? And so I had been asleep, and Bubba came up and said, you won't believe this shit. And we looked over a couple of mountains away. One of the mountainsides just lit up with tremendous amount of light. So here's the middle of the jungle in Laos, lit up like Broadway. And it was a drop zone for the Russians to drop in resupplies to the Laotians. I got on the radio, and I could hear the Russians talking to other Russians on the ground. So we tried to get TAC air out there to shoot those assholes down, but no luck. I would have loved to have been able to chalk up one KIA Russian aircraft.
That would be really dope. Just to explain to people then how you could hear the Russians, the FM radios weren't secure, I suppose, so you could just tune into anything.
Yeah, and that was to our detriment. But on this night, it was our advantage, because as soon as I heard them, I turned on the FM, went through each frequency. I could hear then I found the frequency they were talking on. So I wrote that down. And meanwhile, we're trying to get a hold of our TAC Air. And they had an airborne command unit that flew at night. And we tried to reach them. And then we had a radio relay site. We tried to reach them. No luck. So it's just like when you need a cop, you can't find one. When you need TAC Air. I mean, can you imagine if we could have connected with the airborne command unit, say, hey, we got this Russian aircraft. Shoot those suckers down. That would have been a happy day.
That must have been really frustrating to not be able to get them.
It was.
I can't even imagine. I can't imagine it, because we've been in similar situations when there's people who were left unkilled who needed killing, and it must have just been crazy, because I'm assuming everybody knew that Russia was involved, but this was just it was like a unicorn to actually kind of see it.
Absolutely. And everybody knew the Russians were there. They knew the Chinese were there. Means North Vietnam couldn't have fought that war without the billions of dollars of weapons and training that they got from Russia, the Eastern Bloc countries, and China. They all supported him. So
that night then, you were up on the top of the mountain. I think it was something else I wanted to ask, actually. There's a couple of little notes I made there. One of them, as I suppose, you were saying about the NVA maybe getting up there first. And I guess that's a very real possibility when they are as lightly equipped as they are. And then also, they're probably not moving with the same amount of caution as you guys, are they? Because there's a lot of numbers up there. They're probably just getting like, hey, get up there as quick as you can. Whereas you guys have got to move. You've got to have your little soak periods as you go up there, because, you don't know what's up there. Whereas they can just push people. And also, from what I understand, is they're not afraid to lose people. So if they send some people ahead and they hit a claymore, well, they got more people to follow up behind them.
Oh, yeah, that's true. And we did leave behind a few toe poppers, like the small anti-personnel mines. So if you stepped on it, it would blow up your foot. And that's why we called them toe poppers. And the first day, that first day, the first 24 hours on the ground was the most intense and the most dynamic. Like you said earlier, the changes in emotions going from, okay, we're on the ground, we're in, nobody's on us, we got everything set up. Oh, now we're being hunted by hundreds of people with dogs, by lights at night. And so that whole transition was one of the most emotionally jarring times on the ground. And then, of course, the Russian to top it off.
Something as well that there's kind of, it's in the it's in your book, Across the Fence, and you're talking about that moment when you hit the dirt and you're lying there, and even though you've got hundreds of NVA chasing you, you're so tired that you kind of just like, I just want to lie down here and go to sleep.
Yeah,
which I think is something anyone that's been in the military has had one of those points, but I don't think a lot of people would be able to get their head into that, because they're like, well, why would you lie down and sleep? There's the NVA are on your heels. But at some point, fatigue takes over. And I think that's when like you were saying, it's because it's because that's when being in a leadership position has its benefits, because it's bigger than you at that point, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. And I knew everybody. The second time I went down, I could just feel each eye on me from the team. And, it was just, I could have just rolled over and gone to sleep right then. I was so tired. And we had gone up that mountain all day, but still mountain climbing, which we didn't train for. We didn't have any mountain climbing gear or anything. And we're all heavily weighed down, going, relatively straight up, zigzagging back and forth, going through the jungle. Some parts of the jungle were really thick. Other parts was a little bit more open, so we could see more, like when we ran into those woodcutters. And fortunately, they didn't report us, or whatever happened, the NVA were not able to respond to us being on that mountaintop. But at night, we could hear other activity further down the mountain, because sounds travel so far. But we stayed on top of that mountain for another for a total of 4 nights. And then finally on the 5th day, we moved down. And then during each day, Sal and Son would go out and do a little recon and on each side of the mountain. And we put out claymores and normal things like that, just in case we got hit. And they did little area recons that report back just to see if anybody was out there. They would travel really light, just a car 15 and a bandolier. And they would go down the mountain and come back around to make sure that we had nobody coming at us in big numbers. And somehow we lost them, or they didn't find us. And then on the 5th day, the weather was going to break. So we moved off the mountain. And when we were close to last light, we came into an area in Laos that was flat in the jungle, but they had these huge granite, I don't know, they reminded me of, what's that? Stonehenge.
Stonehenge, yeah.
Yeah, they had these big structures like Stonehenge. And we set up our RON in the middle of the stuff because there's only one way in and one way out. Had the Claymore mines there. And that was our RON. It was in the middle of, it was a scaled down version of Stonehenge, but it was so cool. We took pictures. Of course, we turned them in. We never saw them again. But it was an amazing moment in time. And so then in the morning, here come the dogs. The dogs were back. They came at us. They pushed us out to the LZ. And another team made contact. And so we had to wait for our extraction. And so they came at us, and we had Claymore mines out, toe poppers, and they hit them. They got blown up with that stuff coming after us. Then we had a couple ongoing firefights. And then when the first gunships came in, they got hammered by the NVA. And after several gun runs, they made a plan to come in with gunships, and the slicks were going to come in right behind them. And then we got up. Henry King had that pump M79. He fired off 5 rounds. Me and Bubba fired off 2 rounds each. And then Tuan, our grenadier, fired a round. And we hammered the North Vietnamese. Just imagine being on the receiving end of 8 40 millimeter rounds.
Jeez.
So we put down that fire base. The helicopter came in, the gun run, then the slick came in right behind it. And because it was the first time we had the 101st Airborne pick us up. So I told Bubba, you got to get out there and tell that American door gunner that we got Vietnamese and don't shoot our people. So that's one of the little extra considerations that we had, that if you worked with indigenous people, you knew you had to be careful when you're getting picked up.
Yeah, absolutely. I've got a question, Till. What was scarier for you when you're in you're waiting in the jungle, you've gone to ground. What worried you more, the humans or the dogs?
Hated both.
Fair.
And the dogs would lead to trouble. Fortunately, we had enough mace and pepper that we fouled their noses a few times on that mission. And that slowed them down. Of course, the handlers knew that they were getting closer to us. So on that last day, they pushed us out to the LZ. And then we had that ongoing firefight in the distance with the NVA because they were coming down the mountain towards us, but they were in a jungle. It was more of a thin jungle area. And so we were able to hold them back. Of course, what I forgot to say was at one point, one of my teeth broke when I was up on that mountaintop. So I kept packing it with rice. So I had this really bad tooth. And so anyways, and then the sidebar was we finally got pulled out. Every aircraft got shot up. We get back. The major, who was an S3, pulled me in. He questioned me. He wanted to know why we got pulled out. And I explained about my tooth and the weather. He goes, "You're a coward. You should have stayed in longer. You should have broke contact and continued mission." Okay. Other than the fact I wanted to cold cock him,
Smash.
I went to the dentist and got my tooth pulled. And we came back, got a new mission. The next day we had a new target.
The thing is once you're in the because you were saying, you'd managed to put distance. Once you're in the distance that you can be under fire of each other in the jungle, it's got to be very hard at that point to actually manage to successfully break contact.
It's really hard. And it's just something that people in the rear echelon tell you to do, but they don't, they've never experienced it themselves. That's like the REM factor,
Oh yeah, we are familiar with that one, aren't we, Joseph? Again, it's some things never change. Joe, do you have any questions about what Tilt's just been talking about, mate?
I mean, fuck me, what an adventure, man. That's just some fucking crazy shit. Dreams are made of that shit, man. Do you know what I mean? I'm sat here listening to these stories and I feel like I'm being fucking cuckolded.
Yeah, it's absolutely bonkers, but I feel it's really interesting though, because there are so many similarities. There's, like you said, like there's the wow factor for us as veterans. Is like, wow, can't believe that, can't believe this. One of the things that's different as well about Afghanistan, Iraq, and yeah, we were outnumbered at times. Some units were outnumbered at times, but never to the scale of, I mean, well, I'm sure there's some SF units and stuff that have been, don't get me wrong.
Oh yeah.
But, but for a lot of us, it's, a lot of times, I never, even though we were being hunted, you'd get IEDs and then it'd be an ambush. That's very different to being tracked with dogs and knowing there's tanks and stuff coming after you and things. And it's just, I can't even imagine the rage you must have had when you've gone through all that. You've eaten dirt. You've been chased, you've been going up and down mountains, and you come back and, oh yeah, you got a broken tooth, and someone calls you a coward. I mean, you must have wanted to smash his head off.
Oh yeah. Yeah, absolutely. But I had witnesses, and he was a major. At that point, I was just a Spec 4, because I was just a low-life E4, I didn't but I was a 1-0, and proud of that fact. But so that was one of the, for me personally, one of the most memorable missions, for all the different reasons combined, like you said, being so high. And then here's another thing that you and Joe can identify with. You get the adrenaline high in a firefight that you don't get anywhere else. And you miss that when you get out. That high, not only because you're in the middle of it, but then when you're done, you're like, we just had a firefight and I'm still alive. Fucking A.
I still feel that way now. Every now and again, I get a little bump when you remember that.
Oh yeah,
but no, like both Joe and I we've made let's say a lot of bad decisions after the military, and none of them have come close to matching that kind of, like you said, it's like it lasts afterwards. The only thing I can think would really come close to a lot of people, and it's still not the same level, is when you have a big win in life, whatever that might be, whether they get the girl that they want, or you get a new business thing comes through and you get that moment of, fuck yeah, we did it. That to me it comes quite close, but then it's not the same, but it does come quite close, when you have those big wins in life. Right.
It's like being interviewed by you. It's like, wow, I've been waiting for this for years. Now it's finally happened.
Well, thanks. Right. Let's talk about SOG, the Prairie Fire.
Armor 3, yes.
Is it Armor 3? Joe and I aren't gamers, so you're going to have to bring us up to speed on this one, Till.
Well, I'm not a gamer either, but what little I know about this was a few years ago, Armor 3 said, we're going to put together a SOG recon game. And they said, but we want to do it. We want to pay homage to the SOG, men of SOG who fought in the war. And they said, we want to make it as authentic as possible. We need consultants. So Ken Boray, who was the last American 1-0 for RT Idaho, my recon team. So I left Idaho in 70. Ken came on in 71 and was the last American team leader. And then he, when they left Idaho, ran missions across the fence on their own. So Ken came to me. We worked with Rob Graham from Arma, Savage Design, and they put together this game. Right now, they've got over 120 artists. They're still working on it and working on a new version and a new update. I don't understand the game or technology, but it went on sale May 6th, and it has different stories that are related to SOG. And my stepson, who was an Iraqi veteran, loved the game. He played it. He said it's really accurate. The depictions, they have a lot of depth to the computer game. So when you see it, you can see enemy troops far away, jungle. They got helicopters. They also got king bees. And what little I've seen of it's been really impressive. And we have the Special Operations Association, which is the association put together by SOG men. And it was formed in 76. We have annual reunions, and the Savage Design and Arma, after they sell a certain number of games, there'll be a donation to the SOA. And then they try to get music from the period to use that music. Like I really wanted Arthur Brown, Fire.
Was that Fire? That one. Oh, that's great.
I give you fire. I give you fire. And as a sidebar, imagine being on a mission in Laos and you had numerous napalm strikes. You get extracted under fire. You come back to base. You walk into the pub and you hear Arthur Brown. I give you fire. I give you fire. That happened, by the way. It's a real life scenario. But Mr. Brown or his people or his handlers couldn't see fit to share with us. They want us to pay a lot of money. So we said, not me, but Rob Graham and his people were very diplomatic, said, thank you, but no thank you. I would have told them, oh, fuck off. But Rob and them were much more courteous. And then they hired a composer who's done music, and they're selling the music. And every music sale, there's a donation to the SOA. And they're preparing to make their first donation off of that, even though the game only went on sale 14 days ago. So it's been a big deal that way. And the veterans from SOG that are in the SOA will get a benefit from the game. And there's going to be more additions from it. And there's sidebars. Like if you go to Arma 3, you can go in and see interviews with myself, other people that have been consultants. We got Don Haas, who's a helicopter pilot from the 195th, talking about flying SOG missions and getting shot at and shot down. And other people like Dick Thompson, who's one of my heroes. And Dick had one of those missions where, I don't know if you heard this one or not before, Joe. I think G's has heard already, but he was going up to headquarters for R&R papers. On the way into headquarters, somebody yells, "Hey, Dick, help us. There's a team that's on a bright light and they're in deep trouble. Help us tie the ropes down." So the UE had to have the ropes tied down, 150-foot ropes that they dropped for a string extraction. So Dick, being an officer, runs up there, takes his gun and his web gear off, sets it down on the runway, jumps in the UE. He's tying it down, and the helicopter took off with him on it. He turned to the door gunner and goes, "Hey, I'm not supposed to be here." And the guy goes, "You're here. Pick a number from 1 to 10. 6, you lose." So he winds up flying over the target. And when they get over the target, they kick the ropes out. He borrowed the door gunner's M16 and his bandolier with 5 magazines in it, puts it on. He has no gloves to rappel down a 150-foot rope. He realizes his idea is a bad idea when the blood turns the rope red. And just to add to the drama, the helicopter pilot lifted up. He ran out of rope. So he let go and free fell into the jungle, into triple canopy, broke 2 or 3 ribs. And the M16 he was carrying, the magazine fell out when he made impact on the tree branches. He crawls down the tree, gets on the ground, makes contact with the enemy, kills 2 soldiers right away, and he continued and completed the mission. Now that to me is a stud, and that's Dick Thompson. So they have these interviews and other specialties that go along with it, and there's more stories to come. I can't talk anything more beyond it because it's all top secret, you know.
You'd have to kill us. I don't want to die. That's crazy. That's straight out of a movie. But you'd go, it's too far-fetched. I should get 10 of your best Vietnam era songs off you, and then I'll make a playlist on Spotify. So when guys are playing Arma 2 and Arma 3, the SOG Prairie Fire, they can have the Tilt playlist going on in the back. So we'll get Arthur Brown on there, and I'll get some other ones off you as well. We'll make a playlist for the listeners. How's that sound?
I like it. Sure.
Joe, we'll have you. You can, because you've been a co-host today. You can stick an audition in there as well.
I'll use it as my gym playlist.
It would be a good gym playlist. But I'll do that. I'll get that on there. The other thing I wanted to ask you about, Till, is the Sogcast.
Oh yes. Well, this is top secret, so you can't tell anybody. Okay.
Oh, all right. Probably not the best place to put it out then.
No, but I've been working with Jocko, and we have come up with a thing called Sogcast, where I'll be interviewing SOG recon men. We've done 6 already. And so they're in the can, and then Jocko is going to begin posting them, quote, soon on his social media. And so we're standing by to stand by. I've done 6 of these, and this is Jocko, to his credit, the Navy SEAL that had 2 tours of duty in Iraq. The second one being Ramadi, where they retook Ramadi, and he was the officer in charge of Task Force Bruiser. They lost good men in that battle, and he really appreciates all of that. And then he has an English major on top. He's a good writer, and so be strictly SOG stories with men who served on our recon or aviators who served in SOG.
That Henry V one is great. I think Henry V was Welsh too, so we can definitely recommend that one on the podcast.
Well, yeah, Jocko had that line in there. Every actor who was portrayed that Henry V, they didn't do a good job.
We had one of Jocko's guys on the podcast, Mike Sorelli. We had Mike on. So, guys, it's funny actually. I can't remember if I told you this. So, Mike was recording at one of their offices, and you can hear Jocko talking to the staff in the other room through the wall.
Was that right?
Yeah. Not like in a bad way, but just because it's like, because Mike was saying, like, he was like, this is how you can tell he is authentic to who he is. He's like, he's fired up all the time. You can hear him through the wall, like, we got to crush this and all this stuff. He's a pretty dope bloke.
Yeah, Jocko never needs a megaphone.
That's one of the things I think the intangible things that you come out of the military with is that ability. Because one of the things that surprises me is, and I think we all get this to a certain extent, is something like public speaking can be quite scary to someone, even someone that's been in combat. We did this thing when we were in what we called a checkpoint, which was like a really tiny, it's basically a small compound where you'd have maybe 12 to 18 guys. And we got the young guys, we'd get them to stand up at night because we didn't have any electronics or anything like that there. We had a fire pit and that was it. You have guys on guard and then everyone else would sit around the fire pit and chat shit. And we'd get the young guys to stand up and talk. And even though these guys had been in contact with the enemy, they were more scared about standing up and talking in front of their peer group than they were about fighting. But it's something that's one of the great things that the military gives you, I think, is if you use it properly, is like that confidence you gain from being able to stand up in front of other men and give orders and speak. I speak reasonably coherently, but that's something like there's those kind of intangibles that you get, from service. I mean, do you feel that your service has stood you in good stead through the rest of your life?
Oh, absolutely. I was uncertain as to where I was going to go. So, getting into the Army, I joined specifically to go to Special Forces training if I got qualified for it. So they must have lowered the standards or something. So anyway, I got in, and once you're in, to this day, I judge all men against the men that I served with 50 years ago. They're such high quality men, and it's like you said, they're a close-knit fraternity. It has helped me in a lot of different ways. And no matter how bad the situation is, it's like, at least we're not getting shot at with AKs, and you can move on from there. And then I think the other point of that is the guys who have seen the elephant, like you and Joe, that have been in Mortal Kombat, everybody's humble. The guys who are really in combat, they don't come back and say, hey, man, I had this big firefight and I killed 3 motherfuckers, You guys don't get into that stuff. You carry your pride within, and the veterans talk to each other. It's the blowhards that are out there thumping their chest, the wannabes that talk about what great warriors they were when they aren't. The guys who really saw the elephant, they just take the pride and go home.
I think part of that humbling experience, though, is if you become somebody with an interest in the military and the interest in war on a grand scale, and you start reading books like Across the Fence, and you start reading books like Jocko's books and these kind of books, the more you read, the more you realize, you know what, I haven't actually done that much. And I think that is something that's kind of the really, because the thing is, it's like you can go back to your hometown, the town I live in right now, this village. There's, from what I know, there's me and a couple of other guys from around this area that have been away and done things, but you could be, there's a pub across the street here, you could be Johnny Big Bollocks in the pub, because you know that you're the only one in this area that's kind of gone and done that. But with the internet and with social media and stuff now, like you can go on, I've got a call in a couple of days, I can't say with who, all I'll say is I'm very excited about it, because this is a guy that I heard about probably a year ago, and I'm like, wow, this sounds like this dude's legit. And, and that's the great thing about the internet and social media and podcasting, is that you get to have conversations like this, and we hear about your friend Dick rappelling down a rope without gloves and then dropping through 3 layers of canopy. It puts what you've done, it doesn't diminish it by any means, but it's like, it's the same as, I played rugby as a kid. I played rugby for a fairly okay level, but I was never a bloody, professional and international player. And you need to have that kind of thing. What do you reckon about that, Joe?
Yeah, I mean, like you say, the world becomes very small with the internet. I mean, even though the Brits were never really involved with Vietnam, apart from, the odd few spooks here and there, but Vietnam is one of the most iconic military events, of history. And to have someone from Mac V. Sorgan to be sat there talking to him, that's about as fucking iconic as it gets. Do you know what I mean? It's just out there. And it makes you feel like the things that we did. I get a lot of young lads who send me messages, or even other guys that they talk about things like Operation Panther's Claw. And I think back and I think, well, I was lucky to be involved in that, because that was quite an epic time to be a soldier. But it pales in a very dim comparison compared to something like doing Mac V. Sorgan fucking Nam. Do you know what I mean?
Well, our generation grew up on the Vietnam movie era generation, and I know a lot of them are kind of cheesy. You had Tour of Duty, the TV show, Hamburger Hill, Full Metal Jacket, Platoon. That's what people of me and Joe's age, our generation, that was that's what we got put in our heads of our idea of what war was. And then, because guys would quote it and stuff all the time, and when you first go away on operations, you compare what you're doing to what you've seen in the movies. That's just how it goes. And and I think that like Joe was saying, even though British weren't directly, because there's no movies about the Falklands War or anything like that, but there's all movies about Vietnam, and I read a lot about Vietnam as well, because there's a lot of memoirs about Vietnam and a lot of very good ones.
Yeah, there's a couple of battles in World War II also.
I mean, is that what you grew up on, like being fed stories about kind of World War II?
Absolutely. You kidding? Sure. Audie Murphy. Then they had documentaries at the time. There'd be a whole series about the African campaign with Monty and going up against Rommel, and then the war changing to the European theater and some of the decisions behind the scenes, and then of course the Japanese, and then China having two wars at once. The communist biding their time, trying to gain during a period of war when they didn't care if they lost 100, 200,000 people. That's okay. The Chinese communists just wanted to get ahead someday and at any price. Whereas Chiang Kai-shek and his people had to fight the honorable fight. They worked with us, and just crazy stories that go on. And that war, there's so many memorables. I mean, the Flying Tigers with John Wayne, even though it was commercialized, still an incredible story. And then, my dad in 1961 or 62, whenever he came out, he goes, me and my best buddy said, you are going with me to see this movie, The Longest Day. I go, Dad, that's ancient history. That was 18 years ago that war ended. It's like, oh my God. But we went and we saw that movie. Oh, Jesus. Well, you guys are familiar with that. So
great movie.
Oh, yeah.
What unit, what role would you pick for yourself if you were in World War II?
Oh, it's got to be the Rangers coming out of Montana. You know, the first Special Service Group, we had the Canadians combined with the Americans. And that's the one I would have wanted to be in. And I mean, and think about those guys climbing up the seawall, and the Germans are shooting down at you. And they had guys that lived. And not only did they live, they got to the top and got the Germans out. That's just blows my mind.
It's nuts, isn't it? How about you, Joe? What's your Second World War job?
Part of me, from starting off on armour, part of me, I think, would like to experience, being in the African campaign on armour. But I think some of the parts in Europe, sort of D-Day, do you know what I mean? That's another one. You mean just try and imagine what that fucking day would have been like. I mean, you look round in a 360 and all you can see and hear for as far as the eye can see is major military assets. The skies are full, the water's full, the land's full. It's just fucking unreal.
Mate, I would have liked to have been a pilot, but considering I can't drive a car, I think I wouldn't have lasted very long. So, and I wouldn't have taken the enemy to knock me out either. But yeah, it's an absolutely crazy one to look at, and I think one of the things that like we our kind of generation feels a bit of envy when it comes to the Vietnam one is the way that it seems to be that you were able to say, "Hey, I want to do this job." And they were like, okay, well, we're looking for guys. And then, because you were, what was it, a triple volunteer?
Yeah.
Or something? Yeah. So just tell us a little bit about that, because that's something now you'd be like, well, I want to go and do this. Okay, well, we have a course running in 6 months. You can go and do that. But you've got to go and do this and that. And then 6 months after that, you can do this one. Whereas you guys, they were like, right, who wants to do this? And you were like, me.
Yeah, certainly. We volunteered for the Army, volunteered for jump school, volunteered for Special Forces. And then after the in-country training, and we were told about this, said at the end of your in-country training, somebody's going to come out and say, we're looking for volunteers. Well, sure enough, we ended the in-country training. We just watched the movie, The Green Berets, with John Wayne. The guy comes out and goes, we're looking for volunteers. And Johnny McIntyre goes, for what, Sarge? Can't say. Either you're in or you're not. And we all volunteered. Welcome to SOG. Welcome to the Secret War.
See, if me and Joe had done that, they would have been like, great, you've got guard duty this weekend. So
you're right, though. It is, do you know what I mean? It's like, I mean, me and you both volunteered for Iraq. We volunteered for Afghanistan. We both tried to stay on in Afghanistan. And for me, that's one of the key iconic things about the NAM era was, I mean, if someone turned around now and they were going to stay in Afghanistan, they just opened it up to the public again. It's all right. Any veterans or civilians who wants to go to Afghanistan? Do you know what I mean? It's never going to happen again. Like what? Well, I can't ever see it happening again. Like how it happened with Vietnam.
Yeah, things are too bureaucratic now. I mean, there's obviously big bureaucracy in Vietnam too, but we're in this kind of ass-covering litigation era where someone's like, oh, well, if we let this person stay on another 6 months and they die, their family will sue us for under, the Workplace Safety Act or something bonkers like that.
I mean, just look what's going on with British recruitment at the minute. I mean, you've got young lads trying to join the army. They've got to go through that civilian company, Capita, and they're like, no, you can't join the army because you had a knee injury when you was 8 or you had eczema when you was fucking 4. I think, do you know what I mean? it's just fucking unreal what good guys are getting knocked back for. I've got a good friend who was he ended up joining the French Foreign Legion because of that, because he tried to join the British Army in 2013, 14, and because he had eczema when he was a child, they turned him away. So he ended up going to France and joining the French Foreign Legion.
Yeah, it's bonkers.
I got to tell you guys something. Every time I see footage from Afghanistan in the mountains or Iraq in the desert, I'm glad I'm not in that war. At least in the jungle, we could run and hide a little bit. You guys are just butt naked out there. Come blow me up with an IED, man. That's nasty.
We hid in the vehicles pretty well.
On the bright side, we couldn't get helicopters, and we didn't have any trees stopping where we could get helicopters. I think we took that for granted, how easy it was to get helicopters to pick casualties up.
It would be nice to go back to the days of fighting wars in temperate climates like Europe, because you had the jungle, we had the desert. Like both places had big insects, big bloody spiders. Like, how about having I'm sure as terrible as all the 100 Years' War was and everything in France, at least the weather was nice. Pay a lot of money to go on holiday there.
Right, and they only fight in the good weather. They wouldn't fight in bad weather. They had a general, we'll stop the war for 4 months now. It's going to snow.
That is something I think people. It's even if you've been there, I think once you're removed from it, it's like every now and again. I'd love to know if you have the same thing, Tilt. Is sometimes when you look at a picture or you see a bit of video, all of a sudden, like Joe will know what I mean by this. You can taste the dust all over again. You can taste the dust and you can feel this weight of like a blanket of heat on you. Like when you see a picture of the jungle or footage of the jungle, does that kind of like put you back in there?
Or when you're at Heather Airport and you smell JP4.
What's JP4?
That's the jet fuel.
Oh.
That they use for the helicopters and, of course, fast movers.
So does that remind you of the FOBs or being on the planes themselves or on the aircraft themselves?
It's the aircraft themselves, because I think that's what the helicopters use also. The smell of that, and it's like, well, I remember being down at the airstrips in Da Nang, Saigon, and just takes you back. It's like you're right there. And some smells, still. If you eat Vietnamese food, sometimes a certain odor from a certain food was like, bing. We're back with our Vietnamese team in little village of Phu Long, having a chow break, and then of course they would always like test you. There's a mystery meat. You eat it, we'll tell you what it was. Good, okay. It could be a cow's balls, it could be a cow's eye, but you had to eat it. So
what's that dish? The Vietnamese dish? Is it pho or or something? Like
PHO.
Yeah, because that stuff is good. That is good. I've had that one.
Oh yeah.
So do you go to Vietnamese restaurants then? Well, I mean, I don't know if they have them where because now you're out in Tennessee, aren't you? But in California, there's a lot of Vietnamese restaurants and stuff.
Oh yeah, we loved it. We loved Vietnamese food. There had a couple of good Vietnamese restaurants we regularly went to because it's just great. Food's healthy.
Joe, do you go to many Afghan restaurants?
Not yet.
Oh.
They had some in the Oceanside, but we moved. We ran away from. I was afraid the Afghan would have some Taliban working for them.
I love Middle Eastern food, but I mean that's not what we ate on deployment. When we were on deployment, we ate ration packs. But I mean, you guys had ration packs too, right?
But see, here's the difference between us and you guys. At FOB1, we had a chef who used to work at the Hanoi Imperial Hotel. And in 1954, when the French fell, he came south. The CIA hired him. We hired him from the CIA, and we had a beautiful mess hall. So every morning you had a choice of 2 or 3 things for breakfast, at lunch, 2 or 3 things, and dinner would be like primetime chow. And then we go down and get steaks. Our Vietnamese would kill a chicken or something, get a Viet Cong flag, and put the chicken blood on and go, look at this. We captured this from the NVA. Give us 500 steaks. We go to the Air Force, get 500 steaks for a phony flag. But the chow was phenomenal.
Poor old Rem. Someone's passed that that flag has been passed down to somebody's grandson now
Yeah.
with the chicken blood, and they're gonna take it. They're gonna take it on like one of those shops, like the the TV shows, like the porn stars one, in Vegas, and he'll be taking it in there, and they'll do a DNA test on it, and then they'll be ashamed of their grandparents forever. Before we wrap up today, Till, I just want to hand over to Joe and see if he has any more questions on his beautiful mind.
Yeah, I mean, one other one I've got, and I don't know if you've covered this in any podcast I've not listened to yet, but have you ever been back to Vietnam, or have you ever met any NVA guys, obviously from back then, but now?
No, I haven't been back. No desire to go back, and I've never met any NVA. However, other people have. Spider Parks, my team leader, has been back several times, and he's visited and talked to NVA soldiers, and there's a mutual respect for each other. And 3 years ago, my veterans group, the Special Operations Association, has a POW-MIA committee. The chairman of that committee went back to Vietnam with the National League of POW-MIA families and DPAA from the States on a parallel mission where he met the NVA sapper killers their job was to find us and kill us. And they met, they broke bread together, and then they talked about trying to find ways to work together to help each other to locate their soldiers and to find our missing in action. I don't know if I could have done that or not, but Mike Taylor went back. He represented us, and Mike had been in Vietnam for several years, had over 3 years in SOG alone. That was the one time there.
Till, you might have met them in those restaurants in Oceanside and just not known about it. They might have put something in your soup.
No, they always have the young people working there. All the Vietnamese restaurants have a lot of young folk.
Yeah, I mean, that's why.
No oldie moldies.
I have a thing for Asian women, so that's definitely the reason that I frequent those places. But there's that's one of the things I suppose is very different about the Vietnam, because it happened after World War II as well. I made a little mention about this because some guys came back from Vietnam with wives, didn't they?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Do you know anyone who did that?
My next door neighbor, he had 5 tours of duty with the Marine Corps. Yeah. And then he came home with a Vietnamese wife who was just a lovely lady. And we had a few other men that had got married up and came home with their bride and lived happily ever after.
Joe, didn't fancy an Afghan wife?
No, I mean, I can't imagine Afghanistan ever becoming a country what we can travel back to. And as for the Taliban, I don't think I'd ever want to come across one without wanting to stab him in the fucking face. Not just because of the stuff we did against them and they did against us, but just the atrocities they cause on their own people. I don't think could ever break bread one of them. And as for the women,
they wear out all their goats.
we
over a woman
and donkeys.
I have footage. I have footage of one of them fucking a donkey. From one of our thermal cameras. If anyone's interested in seeing this footage, if anyone's interested in seeing the footage, it's on my Instagram account. I mean, that is the true horrors of war. But it's. I see where you're coming from, Joe, but I actually feel that same way about our own politicians.
Oh yeah, without a doubt.
And I've managed to sit in a room with one of those and not stab them. So I think if I could manage a politician, I could probably manage Taliban as well, because I keep them. They're basically in the same basket for me.
Oh yeah, POS.
Well, the thing is, at least the Taliban own what they are. Do you know what I mean? The politicians try to pretend that they're not the fucking. They're not that. I don't think I could ever sit down and break bread with a fucking politician either. Do you know what I mean? Fuck them.
You know what's funny though is I really think that human nature just doesn't change, because so much of what Tilt said appeals to, like, I think not just myself, but I know a lot of listeners here. It'll be like, oh yeah, I knew a guy like that, or yeah, that sounds like something I would have liked to have done. And then the same thing, we've got the Remfs. You got the politicians. Like, what do you reckon, Tilt? Does human nature change?
No, it's the same. You got people that do it, people that pretend to do it, people that want to do it, and then those that are just unconscious.
That is a great bit of wisdom. I think we'll wrap up on there. As ever, sir, thank you for your time today. I really appreciate it. And thank you for coming on the podcast and sharing these stories with us, because they are fantastic.
Well, the pressure's on mine. I just want to know, Joe, you done paying for all those tattoos yet? I can't imagine.
Yeah, I'm all paid up. I've still got some spaces to fit some more yet, though. But
don't forget your manhood. Get one there.
If there's not enough space.
I've got a Dutch friend. He's got a swastika on the end of his cock, and he calls it his German helmet.
Oh my god!
A fucking true story. It's been a pleasure to meet you. I'll drop you a message on Instagram.
I appreciate that. Thanks, Joe.
If anybody wants to sponsor, Joe's got some space under his armpits. If anyone wants to sponsor him and get their company logo underneath there, then let us know. But thank you both for your time today, gents. It's been an absolute pleasure. Cheers, mate.
Have a good weekend.
Cheers, Tilt. Cheers, brother.
You too, brother.
Mate, unbelievable. And we've been lucky on this podcast. We've had a few Vietnam veterans on, and you know, like they don't load it up at all. They come across it, and to be honest, mate, like. I'm definitely been one of those guys who did think I was better than other people for having been on tour. I think a lot of us go through that phase when you come back. You're like, people don't get it. Oh, like everyone else is a coward. I've definitely been through that phase, you know. Like, I think we do, because I think, to be honest, mate, to be a combat soldier, I think you have to have a chip on your shoulder and your ego to do the job at the time.
It's the same with like cat badge mentality and that, and unfortunately there's a lot of guys who carry it into civilian life as well. I mean, for me, all that cat badge mentality and stuff, I left it all at the fucking gate in the rearview mirror when I left, but there is some dicks who carry it on. But yeah, it's an essential part. I mean, I always take the piss out the parachute regiment because they've never done the job since fucking Suez. But that mentality, what they've got, of thinking that they're better than everyone else, is what actually makes a lot of them better than the average soldier, because they genuinely fucking believe it. So I take the piss out of them a lot, but it's a mentality that works.
Yeah, the regimental ethos is fantastic, I think. And I'll say this as well, because this is something that I never really considered before the military. And to be honest, it's something that maybe was always been a thing, but it's definitely more of a thing now that there's social media and stuff, is that you're only going to go into the military for a certain amount of time. And I think that, you know, it's worth looking at a regiment now and going, how is this regiment going to benefit me after the military? And something like if you want to work in fitness, or if you want to work in, you know, anything that requires, you know, like a bit of kind of kudos on your CV, the parachute regiment and Royal Marines and stuff, they carry a brand recognition that, like, if someone's in a gym and they see like, you know, they have the boards for the trainers, and they're like, oh, parachute, you know, you don't put army personal training, you put parachute regiment PTI. People are like, oh, parachute regiment. And like, I think that's something people should consider before they join the army now, is what is this regiment's like, what is this kind of going to have, not only into, because most regiments don't really come with qualifications that are, you know, like directly linked to a job. I think there's a lot of intangibles that come with it. And one of those is, you know, I'll be 100% honest with writing and stuff. If you want to get your books out there, go and do SF selection. That's bottom line. Bottom line. You could have, as someone that was on Panther's Claw, you might have seen a lot more combat than a lot of SF blokes. But if you go to the shop, a publisher with a book, and an SF bloke goes, they're probably going to take the SF bloke because it's marketable.
Yeah, it is. And this is the difference as well with with Tilt's time. Do you know what I mean? A lot of that special forces stuff back then was if you volunteer for it and you got the mindset. And although people tried to sell that as that's what it's like these days, it's not. There's a lot of fucking face-fit politics that go on with it. And another reason, like, do you know what I mean? The parachute regiment have such a high number of guys that then go on into like regiments like 2-2. I'm not saying they're not good enough to do it, but a lot of that is because they spent so much time like in one par and that working with them, and they know the guys are the faces to look out for, and it sort of smooths the way to go through to it. But back in the day, that was like that was like the true pioneering. I think Vietnam's like the true pioneering of clandestine special forces.
Definitely.
And it's just, I could talk to him all fucking day. It's just fucking, what a fascinating fucking life that fucking guy's led.
The nuts thing about Tilt is that you and me are like, whoa. And then he's like, well, let me tell you about this guy. And you're like, what? Like, because it's like, we look it up at him, like, because some of the Tilt stories are nuts. Like, because we barely scraped the surface here. The guy's got about, I think he's on like book 5 or something now. He's not even scraped the surface. And then his mates to come in. And like I said, it doesn't diminish what you or I did or what anyone listening to this podcast did. Doesn't diminish what we did. Doesn't diminish the loss of any of our brothers or anything like that. That being said, you have to just look at it and go, it's weird because it's not necessarily like the danger was any different because it was a different kind of danger, you know? But I think it's just this principle of taking a small team of blokes, putting them in a country where they're not supposed to be, in the middle of divisions of NVA, thousands of them, with tanks and dogs and units dedicated to tracking them down. Now, like I said, I don't know everything that's going on in the SF world. It could be that stuff happens now, but I think the added thing on top of that, it's the jungle. You know, it's not a mountain where you can see people coming from the other mountain. These people might literally put their hand on your boot. Like, it's mad.
Yeah, I mean, I've said before that at the time when my section got cut off for 5 days, carrying the body of the colonel and one of our guys, and they knew that we were cut off, and we had the contacts from them, but still nobody ever came and grabbed my fucking boot. Do you mean it's just like a whole fucking next level of shit? Do you know what I mean? It's just fucking mental, and I'm not saying I wouldn't have done what he did, and I'm not saying the guys like nowadays wouldn't have done like what we did in Panther's Claw, but he was there at the time and he fucking did it. You know what I mean? And what a fucking bloke.
And he admits he's not someone that's like, oh yeah, I wasn't scared. He's like, no, like, you know, and it's things going up and down. But I feel very lucky, mate, that I think what we were missing, our generation, I think what we were missing when we came back off our tours was mentors.
Yeah.
We didn't have them. And now I feel like we've had on the podcast from the Vietnam era, we've had Tilt, we've had Cal Malentes, we've had Captain Dale Dye. And I can 100% tell you without any hesitation that when I've had those conversations with these Vietnam veterans, it has helped me put my shit into I'm not going to say into a box because that makes it feel like you're kind of putting it on a box and hiding away. But it made things kind of click into place for me where I felt better about everything. And I think that's what we were lacking when we came back, mate, was this generation, like, because it's, even though there is generations technically in the middle of us that did stuff, really, I see Vietnam as the closer comparison to, because I'm not taking anything away from Northern Ireland vets, but it wasn't like Afghanistan. It was, you know,
No.
And Vietnam wasn't exactly like it, but there was more similarities, I think. And like to be able to talk to these guys now, it's almost like a dad talking to his kid and helping you grow into a man. I feel these guys are helping us grow into veterans. And then like I feel that when we're going on, we'll have the same thing.
In that healthy way.
Yeah. Exactly, mate. I think that's really cool. But mate, thanks for coming on today, mate. We should have you on again. I'm glad. I was worried you were going to start flashing your penis at some point, but
tempted.
You didn't. Sign this. Why have you and me been doing this podcast for a while? Nobody's asked me to sign any appendages.
No.
Well, obviously, we're not good enough, mate. Actually, before we leave, do have something to ask the listeners. Listeners, I want to do more of these episodes, right? Me and Joe. I'd love to be able to do 2 episodes a week. But in order to do that, we need to get the podcast to grow. Because to cover the cost, we'd have to get more sponsors. And to bring more sponsors in, we need more listeners. So if you want more episodes, please, I'm not saying send us money. I'm not saying pay for Joe's tattoos even. But just tell a mate. Bring a mate along. Every episode. We have a good number of listeners. But when we look at the stats, you ain't holding up your end of the bargain and bringing us new listener every week. We should be going up every week. More listeners, more listeners, more listeners. And we're flatlined. Just going to be honest about it. Not very happy about it. I want us to be growing because at the end of the day, I know that there's a lot more veterans out there. And like I always say, we're not going to be everyone's cup of tea. You know, I'm sure our guests are, but speaking, probably I'm not, right? But let's give people a chance to listen. If you enjoy the podcast, I'm sure your mates probably will do too. So let them know about it. Spread the word. Takes 2 minutes to do it don't even take 2 minutes, does it? Let's be honest, to do an Instagram post or a Facebook post.
Or a review.
Thank you, Joseph. Good to see you, brother.
See you, bro.
Hope you have a good evening. Have you hit the weights today?
Yeah, only arms today, though. Then I've got cardio tomorrow, Sunday rest. I'm going for a PB on chest on Monday. Juicy.
What is it? What is it? Cardio? What is it? What lift is? What is it? Is that a bicep exercise or a?
Yeah, I just push the punch bag against the wall till I get out of breath.
You say cardio. I'm assuming you are deadlifting a car or something.
Yeah, something like that.
Kind of cardio you do? Taking clen?
I take some clen and then go on
take
the
a handful of clen. Do you do punch bag for it?
My knees are too shot to shit to go running and stuff like that. And I'm not into this fucking CrossFit stuff, but I'm quite happy in taking out all my fucking rage, doing things like picturing the ex-wife and beating the fuck out the punch bag.
Do you feel that, like, because you know the old cliche that it's like, oh, when it's the weather's bad, your knees hurt. Do you feel, is that true for you? Because I think it is for me. I don't know if I'm just, because I'm miserable.
It certainly is in the winter. Like in the past when I've worked in workshops and stuff like that, do you know what I mean? In the winter, I just fucking hurt everywhere. The knees, the back, fucking joints. You know, I've broke both my hands quite a few times. Like the ends of your knuckles and stuff, they fucking ache and everything. It's just, I fucking hate the winter. This is why we need to get this podcast rocking so we can just move to Arizona or some shit.
Exactly, mate. And if not, then we're just going to send you to the glue factory. Nothing. Boil you down. The cart horse has passed his prime. All right, mate. Cheers for today, brother. I'll catch you soon.
Catch you soon. See you later.
Guys, thanks for joining us today. Tilt, Joe, thank you both for coming on. It was an absolute pleasure to talk with both of you warriors. As always, thank you for coming on. Guys, thank you for listening to the podcast. Combat Fuel, Zulu Alpha Straps, thank you for making today's episode possible. And thank you too to the Royal British Legion. There is no podcast without them, guys. And I mean that, like, literally, there is no podcast without the Royal British Legion. They have been serving veterans and their families for over 100 years. They continue to do so. Thank you to all of you recently who contacted with me with feedback about the Legion. I was able to pass that on to them. The Legion genuinely care, guys, about what you think about them. They're not one of these organisations where they are just looking to get rich with directorships and all that stuff. No, sirree, Bob. They genuinely want the veterans of this country to feel serviced. LOL. And to that end, they sponsor this podcast, and in return, I ask you guys to give your feedback on the Legion so that we can have a two-way dialogue, because they want to put services out there that you guys are using. So thank you to everyone that did that. If you're not familiar with the British Legion, you can check out at Royal British Legion on social media or at rbl.org on Tinterwebs. Check them out, guys. See what services are available. You'll never know when you know it, when you need to use it, hopefully in a positive way, because we don't always need to just ask for help when we're in a shit state, do we? We can go and ask for help when we want to go to the next level of happiness and success. So check out the Royal British Legion, Combat Fuel, Zulu Alpha Straps. Thank you guys so much. I'll catch you next time, and I love you. Bye.
You told me not to worry, and you wouldn't break my heart. You told me you were sorry, yeah, my whole world fell apart. You said it's not my fault, and yeah, I've never done you wrong. I'm grinding to a halt, now I can see you're moving on. I promised I'd get better, and I told you things would change. You keep me to the gutter, yeah, I'll never be the same. I've got to let you go, now live your life and spread your wings. And yeah, you put on quite a show, and pulled the puppet strings. And are you sure that you don't want me? Remember all the pain, or maybe you should thank me. It's your loss and my gain. I'm leaving now forever, I won't hang my head in shame. But yeah, you've taken me for granted, and you should feel ashamed. You sold a dream to all of us, a dream that we'd all die for, a reason for us all to live and something we could fight for. I might just help a man up to his feet or hold a newborn, but no matter what I do, my hands remembering my rifle, yeah.
Life's hard, I know that, still wouldn't change shit. I wouldn't go back, yeah, I wouldn't go back. Feelings I hold back, memories fade, yeah, they go fast, yeah, they go fast. Good times to come and go, survive the highs and lows, just take it step by step, I guess, yeah, I suppose. Good times to come and go, survive the highs and lows, just take it step by step, I guess, yeah, I suppose.